Oh yeah, this is a troll-free zone. Oh yeah, this is a troll-free zone.
And only think of the future. And so he wants to be treated for his heel. That was a world record. They had a guy in about 30 minutes or 20 minutes after the shooting. I would put law enforcement officials to the test today to beat that time. I don't think they could. And what was interesting was the Amarillo Globe Times had a story that came out that day in the headline front page: "Hidden assassin kills president." Okay, so I always thought that was interesting because in the hidden assassin headline, right underneath it, it said they believed that the shots were fired by a white man, about 30, slender of build, 165 pounds, 5'10" but this was a hidden assassin. Okay, well, yeah, and they seem to have had his address and everything. They went to his house. They knew he was at a theater after someone reported him walking in without paying. It's just, to me, it's bizarre, it's weird, and it's not normal by any stretch of the imagination. And
all too many things, Todd, in such a short time. And Danny, thank you for your call and bringing us these important pieces of information as we try to piece the puzzle together. But let's see, ladies and gentlemen, before we go to the next break, if we can actually listen in to NBC News, a little short clip, we call it clip number one, about the events that happened on that historic date, November 22nd, 1963.
And Delano Roosevelt.
Excuse me, Chad. Here is a flash from the Associated Press, Dateline Dallas. Two priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds. There is no further confirmation, but this is what we have on a flash basis from the Associated Press. Two priests in Dallas who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds. There is no further confirmation. This is the only word we have indicating that the president may, in fact, have lost his life. It has just moved on the Associated Press wires from Dallas. The two priests were called to the hospital to administer the last rites of the Roman Catholic Church, and it is from them we get the word that the president has died, that the bullet wounds inflicted on him as he rode in a motorcade through downtown Dallas have been fatal. We would remind you there is no official confirmation of this from any source as yet.
Bro, just moments before you go.
What's exactly happening, ladies and gentlemen, is something very quick. It's amazing how all these things happen in such a...
Oh yeah, this is a troll-free zone.
2 p.m. Central Standard Time.
No trolls allowed.
That official at 2 p.m.
I got your goat. I got your goat.
1963. Wow, Todd, this gets even more bizarre. So let's go to the callers here. We got to continue here because we want to, because they are so important. Let's say good morning to Max.
I got your goat.
Good morning, Max. Your theories, your ideas, and your questions.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking my call. It's been in New York radio talk show hosts. It's been a habit that on the 22nd. It's they usually have a show on Kennedy and the Kennedy assassination, but for these past 3 or 4 years, these typical shows by these talk show radios have not been given. So when you guys have this show on, I'm really appreciative of you guys putting the show on. I guess it's
Thank you.
okay. A question concerning this. There was a woman by the name of Judith Mary Baker, I believe her name was, and she came up with a book on Oswald. She said that she had an affair with him, and it seems, according to her, that he wasn't just a stupid Marine patsy, but he made several trips to Russia at the time. During the Cold War, when he went there, he'd leave his passport at wherever the entrance port was, and he disappeared within Russia for about 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
This is kind of I mean, just that says that, says about what Oswald could have been doing or what his setup was. You can take off on
Yeah, go ahead there, Todd. This is interesting, and thanks, Max. If you have to take the answer off air because we've got a lot of callers, but please continue.
Yeah. Okay. So Judith Mary Baker, I've met her a few times. We share a publishing house. I've read her book. It reads like a teenage girl's diary, and I don't believe Judith Mary Baker. I really don't, and I'll give a good reason as to why. She was initially interviewed for The Men Who Killed Kennedy on the History Channel, and they never aired her episode. I think initially because I don't think she was credible. But it's an interesting theory that they worked at a New Orleans coffee place in New Orleans together. That may be the only connection she ever had, but that was a front for the CIA, which was proven later. And so my problem with Judith Mary Baker is she doesn't give a lot of facts. It's a memoir, but it reads like fiction. But if she was being paid at a place that was a front for the CIA back then, where she said she and Oswald were, then I believe that she was an agent for the CIA. I believe Oswald was some kind of agent. You know that even to this day, you cannot get tax records or tax return information on Lee Harvey Oswald. It's impossible to do. And that I think that if Judith Mary Baker was paid as an agent back in 1960, then to this day she remains an agent of disinformation. That's my belief. Now, as far as
and I hate to cut you guys short in this, but the clock rules here, and I do want to say this, Max. I appreciate your concerns. You bring up some very, very good points here. In the short time that we've had with you, I hope you'll be continuing to, check in with our Dr. Sky experience as we open up mysteries of the universe. But Todd, this is fascinating because so many books come out to report so many things. Obviously, everybody has a right in a free country to express these opinions. But again, you're saying that you don't believe, because of your research, that she is very credible in her analysis and in what she writes.
Yeah, and as far as Oswald, there's one myth that they keep bringing up, even to this day, and it's that Oswald was seeking notoriety and he was seeking fame, and for different reasons. He's also accused of firing shots on General Edwin Walker in Dallas.
And let's continue that on the other side of the break. Again, I apologize to everybody to be so short with people, but I think you and I, Todd, know that we're two nice guys and we don't really want to hurt anybody's feelings. But as long as they kind of come in with the same subject matter and not go deviating off into other subjects. We'll be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience with your questions and comments. Still time at 1-800-848-9222.
Coming up this morning at 6 on Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Chairman Jesse Garcia, and Eric Levine, Esquire. This week on the show, Jesse Garcia talks about the U.S.-Saudi economic relationship.
These are situations that we're not always going to agree completely with all of our allies. We don't completely agree with our allies in NATO on every issue. We don't agree with our allies in the EU on every issue.
It's Let the Record Show, holding court for you. 77 WABC.
Hello, this is Sean Catsimatidis. Advertising here on WABC is just common sense. Nielsen has said that WABC is one of the leading AM stations in the country. Tell me what we can help you with. Your business at reasonable rates cross-country. Email me at tax@WABCradio.com, and I will get back to you and tell you the great deal that you can get on WABC. Email me at tax@WABCradio.com.
This is 77 WABC Newsroom Extra.
Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont is launching his re-election campaign for a third term and says as governor, he's turned the state around by restoring fiscal stability, lowering taxes, and strengthening education.
Some people don't feel like they belong in Trump America. They belong in Connecticut. We've come a long way, but the job's not done. Let's keep Connecticut moving forward together.
The Democrat says he wants to lower health care costs and build more housing in an effort to make Connecticut more affordable.
I'm thinking about the Connecticut option. I'm going to put together a network of the very best hospitals that provide the very best value, high quality, low cost, and give you incentives to go there that will save you money.
Governor Lamont vows to bring down the cost of energy. He's facing a primary challenge from State Representative Josh Elliott. Lisa Ritchie, 77 WABC News.
Coming up this morning at 6 on Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Chairman Jesse Garcia, and Eric Levine, Esquire. This week on the show, Jesse Garcia talks about the U.S.-Saudi economic relationship.
These are situations that we're not always going to agree completely with all of our allies. We don't completely agree with our allies in NATO on every issue. We don't agree with our allies in the EU on every issue.
It's Let the Record Show, holding court for you. 77 WABC. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
This is Senator Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts. I'm talking to Steve Case.
As we continue, ladies and gentlemen, to move through time and space, talking about the timeline from William Manchester's book, The Death of a President. At 10 a.m. on November the 22nd, Abraham Zapruder, the gentleman who captured so much of the Kennedy assassination, goes home to get and fetch his movie camera. At 10:05 a.m. on that date, President Richard Nixon, not before he was president, leaves Dallas on American Airlines Flight 82. And then, at 12:25 p.m., Air Force One makes a 13-minute flight from Fort Worth to Dallas Love Field. 48 minutes after the hour, we continue with our special guest, Todd C. Elliott. Todd, let's continue with the callers. Let's go out here to the great state of Arizona, where I am, as we say good morning to Mark. Mark, you're on with Todd C. Elliott.
Good morning, Todd. Great show. I had one question for you. The answer to your question, Dr. Scott, the man that died on November 22nd, 1963, I mean, everybody knows it was John F. Kennedy. How much do I win?
Hey, wow, we haven't started prizes yet. So I'm just going to have to wish that one into the cornfield, if you know what I mean, for that. Okay, Mark.
Okay, so
continue.
basically, I was just thinking before I give my question, make it real quick. The same playbook, Charlie Kirk, John F. Kennedy, and then Butler, Pennsylvania. Same playbook, different time, different targets. That's what happened today. But my question for you, think about that one, is all the books that have been written about the Kennedy assassination, what percentage would you say that were written were done by writers who were paid by the CIA to distract the public?
Interesting question, Mark Todd. Well,
I think that as you look at books that were written around the time of the 50th anniversary, when the intelligence community knew this was going to be a subject of discussion and to be revisited, I think there was some pressure put on. I mean, the movie JFK is based on two books, Crossfire and On the Trail of the Assassins. And I thought those were two really good books. Joan Mellon had some great books on that. One of the doctors at Parkland even wrote a book, which I thought was very insightful. I don't know if they didn't pay me. I sure didn't get my check. But they, I just wanted to do it because I just wanted to put my little brick in the wall of this great big thing. And I'm okay with just writing one. And I just wanted to do my part. I mean, I think I wrote it and researched it from the heart. I think Vincent Bugliosi, who wrote Helter Skelter and capitalized on the Manson murders, was a harsh, hard line. Oswald did it, and he acted alone.
You better believe it. You're so right. Reclaiming History, we interviewed him, and he told me straight up before he passed, he said, I had my secretary on legal paper, I wrote it by hand, and she transcribed it. And I said, well, that's interesting because the book is as big as the old New York white pages or Los Angeles white pages. It's really a well-documented book, but you're so right. His insistence, and I mean, he really put his foot on the pedal and said, no, Lee Harvey Oswald is the assassin. Mark, you get the last word, and we appreciate you also.
Bless everybody. Jesus loves you. The Lord and Savior is the way to go.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Amen, brother.
Appreciate that, great. Let's say good morning to Jim in Connecticut. You've been patient. Good morning, and I hope you're having a good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I want to get to bed. It's 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Hey, we pulled a night shift here. This is good, you know.
Yeah, I saw a lot of stuff through the years. You know, when you put the pieces together, I saw some fantastic documentaries about last year or so, and they were incredible. And I'm surprised a lot of people don't pick up on this stuff. They interviewed Carlos Marcellus. He was in the yard, you know, outside getting some fresh air at the prison. And they questioned him about that. He said, "Yeah, mob was involved." He says, "I'm glad they killed him." He says, "I'm glad." He says, "I'm glad they got the SOB." The whole thing was he was bitter. He was part of the mob. The government always hired the mobsters. Sometimes contracted them because they can get stuff done in countries where our government would have trouble. And they hired, they hired the mobs to try to overthrow Castro with the casinos. And anyway, so he was pissed off because they were supposed to get favors, and then Kennedy's brother, double crossed him. So I don't want to go there to that story. But then the one I saw was, I saw a couple, but they're quite convincing. One guy had a breakdown rifle. I've seen the type of rifle. It's kind of.
I had one too. Yeah, you could put it in a suitcase. Right? It worked.
This was made by Remington, and he said it had a special bullet with mercury in the head. So when it shot you, it really exploded into hundreds of pieces. And when they shot Kennedy, he said from the front. He was near the bridge behind the fence. He was the guy that did it. He said there was four people. He said there was four people that were actually assigned to assassinate Kennedy. He says, not Patsy. He said we weren't supposed to know who all the other people was. He says, but I was the guy that shot Kennedy from the front, blew his head off. He says I was behind the fence. He says the others wore black coats, shirt and tie like FBI agents. They had fake badges that were made actually. He said in the building where Oswald was, he says because there was a little foundry downstairs. He said I think it was that building. He says and that's where they made police badges and FBI badges for the local or the government.
Well, Jim, I appreciate it. The time, of course, is of the essence. I just want to have our special guest on to respond to this because if you do something like this, you're right. And Jim, you bring up some good points. I mean, we're not going to do a firearm class here, but the point is, if you have some of these really sub-calibers, every bottleneck cartridge, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at it, that's why the 5.7, little cartridge that you see in handguns now, it's a little bottleneck cartridge. Why? Well, what is a bottleneck cartridge? The ballistics on that, it's like a little rifle in itself if you have it in a pistol caliber. But the point is, what you're talking about, Jim, is that it probably wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald's Mannlicher Carcano, but that leads the mystery and it opens up the floodgates on that. But, wow. Thanks, Jim. And Todd, you got the floor to the top. We got about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so the motive that Carlos Marcello had was Bobby Kennedy had extradited him out of the country, dropped him off in the jungles of Guatemala. They were putting a lot of pressure on him. He wasn't born in the United States. When he got back, or they had a pilot fly him back to New Orleans, a lot of people believe that David Ferry was the pilot that brought Carlos Marcello back to the United States. That is one theory, a motive for Carlos Marcello wanting to do the job. Mafia would have been low-level mechanics in the field. They could not have done the cover-up, and arranged for such things that day, but they were doing the grunt work. And the shooter that he was talking about from the front, they shot with the mercury-filled bullets, that was James Files. And he's been in prison. I think he's dead now, but he did confess from prison that, he did have the special ammunition, and he was one of the shooters. He kind of looked like Oswald, actually, back in the day. He was probably 18 or 19 years old, and he did run the grassy knoll. Wow. Always thought he was an interesting case. Yeah.
No, it's just totally incredible. But to the audience and our family out there on the Dr. Sky Experience, you're probably scratching your head saying, wait a minute. When is Todd C. Elliott going to tell us the story of Rose Sherman? And I purposely wanted to do this, so obviously Not that people will stay up. Of course, they want to stay up to listen to anything that we have to say. That's opening our minds, and we're proud to have service. So when we come back, I'd like to talk in detail from what your book is about who she was, what exactly was going on there, as you write, with your extensive and exhaustive research. That's a very, very interesting story indeed. But so far, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to get in on the conversation, certainly please do that. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. And tell us how we can get your book and describe the title again so people can understand fully from you.
Sure. The book is called A Rose by Many Other Names, Rose Sheremy and the JFK Assassination. You could get it at Trine Day, that's TRINE Day.com, or call 1-800-556-2012. So that's, I always thought it would have made a good movie, too. So
I think it still has that possibility. We just have to get somebody out there who'll call in and ask for your number off air, and we'll see where that can lead. Right, Todd? That's an amazing story.
Yes, sir.
But in the moments to the top of the hour, I just wanted to continue as outlined the timeline in William Manchester's exceptional book, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen this, though it's printed a long time ago, The Death of the President, it continues on to talk about what happened leading up to the assassination. As I mentioned before, at 12:25 p.m. on November the 22nd, Air Force One made that 13-minute flight from Fort Worth to Dallas Love Field. And then at 1:29 p.m. Central Standard Time, the motorcade turns onto Houston from Main Street. And then 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, the alleged assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, assassinates the president from the sixth floor, that is, of the Texas School Depository. And I got in trouble on a show, and I'm not trying to be a funny guy. I called it the Texas School Book Suppository, but I'm not trying to be funny, so I wanted to clarify that it is. And what was it, seriously? It was a book distribution center for, like, schools and colleges? Is that what it was?
Yes, sir. That's correct. And you mentioned the turn of the president's motorcade onto Houston Street, which if you look at it from the sixth floor, Houston Street, if you were an assassin perched in the Cypress Nest up on the sixth floor, the motorcade coming up Houston would be going directly at you. In other words, a target would be moving, but it would be getting larger and larger in your scope. If Oswald was up there, why didn't he just shoot the president from Houston Street instead of waiting for the motorcade to turn and go under some oak trees? Yeah, so
that concludes hour number one. But ladies and gentlemen, hour number two just around the horizon. Not the event horizon, but around the horizon as we continue talking about the book, A Rose by Many Other Names, Rose Sheremy and the JFK Assassination. We'll be right back.
This is New York's talk leader, the crown jewel of talk radio. WABC New York, WRCR Haverstraw, and 107.1 WLIR Hampton Bays. News first at 59 past the hour. 77 WABC News starts now.
77 WABC News at 59 past the hour. It is 42 and clear skies on this Sunday, November 23rd. Good morning. I'm Liz Radabali. President Donald Trump says he had a great meeting with New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani at the White House. It was all smiles as the two spoke to reporters from the Oval Office, with Trump saying he feels very confident in Mamdani.
I really think he has a chance to do a great job. We're going to help him, but I really think he has a chance to do a great job.
He added that the better Mamdani does, the happier he is because he loves New York. Both men brushed off questions about trading insults when Mamdani was running for office. When asked about Mamdani being critical of ICE, Trump would only say both he and the mayor-elect want a safer New York City. President Trump confirms he gave Ukraine until Thanksgiving Day to sign off on a new Russia-Ukraine peace plan. Trump also told Brian Kilmeade that the plan calls on Ukraine to cede land to Russia that they have not yet lost in the war, with Trump predicting Russia will soon take it by force if the fighting
So we'll lose in a short period of time.
Trump would not confirm other details of the reported plan, which include forbidding Ukraine to join NATO. The news comes as an American delegation arrived this past week in Kyiv to meet with Ukrainian officials. Sticking with the White House, the Trump administration is planning to open over 1 billion acres of U.S. waters to gas and oil drilling. Monica Nelson reports.
The Interior Department announced that 1.3 billion acres of coastal waters will be open for drilling, from Florida's Gulf Coast to the Arctic waters of northern Alaska. The department says it plans to hold over 30 sales of leases in federal waters, including in the eastern Gulf, where many Republicans are against oil exploration. Military exercises held in the region and off the coast of Alaska, which is home to polar bears, walruses, and many other forms of wildlife. I'm Monica Nelson.
A former staffer in New Jersey Republican Congressman Jeff Van Drew's office now faces federal charges for allegedly faking a political attack on herself. Van Drew says he hopes Natalie Green gets the care she needs.
I don't know any more than you all do, and we never would interfere with an investigation or a criminal process.
Green was in court this past Wednesday. Prosecutors alleged that back in July, an accomplice called 911 and claimed 3 guys attacked them while they were walking on a trail at Egg Harbor Nature Preserve. Green was found tied up with wounds and painted derogatory messages on her body. Prosecutors claim Green paid someone to cut her up and paint her body beforehand. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is resigning from Congress. The Georgia Republican announced her decision in a video posted on social media.
I have too much self-respect and dignity. I love my family too much, and I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for.
In her statement, Greene says she's been committed to representing common Americans, but has recognized that nothing gets better for them, no matter which way the political pendulum swings. Greene has become a frequent critic of President Trump, who recently called her a traitor over her stance on the Epstein files. She says her last day in office will be January 5th. A large storm system may be causing headaches for travelers in the lead up to Thanksgiving. Maggie Vespa reports that severe weather has already been affecting parts of the country, including Texas and California.
More storms are slated for next week, with possible snow set to slam millions farther east. All of it on the heels of the government shutdown that led to widespread flight delays and cancellations, but some good news for travelers.
Airport officials say things are getting back to normal. A record 82 million Americans are set to travel this Thanksgiving holiday. AAA says about 73 million of them will go by car. The New Jersey Supreme Court is banning shaken baby syndrome testimony. It's the first court in the United States to bar prosecutors from blaming unexplained head trauma in criminal and custody cases. It's a 6-1 ruling released this week, calls expert testimony about shaken baby syndrome unreliable and therefore inadmissible in court. The decision upholds lower court rulings calling shaken baby syndrome junk science. This despite a 2018 consensus statement about its validity that's backed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. Now your forecast. Today it's going to be partly sunny skies with a high of 50 degrees. Later tonight and overnight, clear skies with a low of 42. Looking ahead to Monday, mostly sunny with a high of 52. Right now it is 42 and clear skies outside our Midtown studios. I'm Wes Radabali. Remember, the news, it never stops at WABCRadio.com.
Coming up at 5 a.m. on the 77 WABC News Hour, Weekend Edition. Talking the news with Lizzie Radabali.
New Yorkers are waiting to see what will come from the release of the Epstein files.
I have a lot of questions, but I don't know. I think it would be releasing the juiciest stuff first to get people's attention. Who knows? I guess there could still be more out there.
We have the latest and more headlines coming up at 5.
The 77 WABC News Hour, Weekend Edition with Lizzie Radabali. Weekend mornings at 5. 77 WABC. Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
6 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience. Programs as you tell us you like with the email that you can send me. And we do resource many guests, not everyone we guarantee, but through this particular email, just DRSKY at WABCRadio.com. To get in touch with our show, the simple contact number, 1-800-848-9222. And I want to thank those that are the helmsmen of our radio show, navigating the powerful signal of 77 WABC, Tony and Bill, who, of course, make sure that you're hearing this show just as good as you would expect from no matter where you are, here on the West Coast of the United States, into the East Coast, around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure even out to the universe. Our special guest is author Todd C. Elliott, a book that we'll get into in detail, Rose by many other names, Rose Cherami and the JFK assassination. Before we do that, more of the timeline as outlined by William Manchester's great book, The Death of the President. At 1:38 p.m., that is Central Standard Time on November 22nd, Parkland Hospital admits case number 24740, the President of the United States, JFK. At 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, the President is pronounced dead by Surgeon Ken Clark. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the story continues. But let's get back to our very special guest, Todd. Let's talk a little bit more about what your book is about so people can hear the story about Rose Cherami.
Okay, so Rose Cherami again was a known prostitute, drug courier, and she ran drugs for Carlos Marcello, we believe. She had quite an arrest record. She had an interesting short life. She became a JFK statistic, though. One of those many witnesses and people who were involved in the assassination investigation who would meet with an untimely demise, somewhere usually alone by themselves on the side of a highway, which happened quite a bit. Now, her life began in Texas. It ended in Texas. She was originally from Houston, but made a life in Louisiana. Now, the depiction the JFK movie gives from Oliver Stone is great. In fact, Jim Garrison wanted her so badly for his case. Again, it was the only case or trial brought forward in the murder of the president. But by the time 1967 had rolled around and Garrison had amped up his investigation, they found out that Rose Cherami had been found dead just outside of Tyler, Texas, on the side of a highway, and she had been found on the side of the road with her head. Someone had arranged her luggage to be in the middle of the road and slowly curve off to the right side of the highway. And at the end of the line of suitcases was her head placed, on the Texas highway, on the curb.
How horrible.
So it was
grotesque.
And I actually talked to the guy who claimed to have hit her. He claims he didn't hit her, but he found her. And he described the scene, and he described it perfectly. And then Oliver Stone, to his credit, really captured that. But there were files on Rose Cherami that Jim Garrison had, and I paid for copies of those. I had every little thing that Garrison had in his collection about her. Now, so 48 hours before the president is assassinated, she's picked up in a small town in Eunice, Louisiana, and she is brought to a hospital. They think she's crazy, and so crazy that she needs to be reprimanded to the state. It's basically a state mental asylum or mental hospital, as it was back then. So they brought her there, like almost in the middle of the night. They dropped her off there. Now, on the day when Friday rolls around, when the president's about to be killed, she's in the hospital telling people it's going to happen today in Dallas. And she even knew, she claimed to get really excitable about it's going to happen at Dealey Plaza. She kind of knew when and where. She had a lot of details for someone who really, no one believed. And then so when she's sent to the hospital, no one believed her until the president was murdered on Friday in Dallas. And after that, the state trooper who had picked her up and brought her to the hospital originally also brought her to the state hospital in Jackson, Louisiana. He made phone calls, and his supervisor called him and said, "You got to get that woman out of this state," it's kind of crazy to think that, like, we're going to extradite her back to Texas. Supposedly they called Captain Will Fitz of the Dallas Police Department. They told Captain Will Fritz They had a suspect in custody, and he was not interested in her. Of course, they had already had their man, and they didn't want any more information. And what was weird was no one in Louisiana wanted her to be around anymore. So these state troopers basically brought her as far as Houston, Texas, and left her there. I mean, here's a lady who had foreknowledge of the assassination, and they just dropped her off in Houston and never saw her again. Now, she did disclose some details that she was to meet a ship captain in Houston, well, at the port of Galveston, and she was to pick up heroin, a large quantity of heroin. The heroin was going to be used to pay the assassins from Dallas. So, and then why would they do that? Because heroin is worth way more than U.S. dollars, probably still is to this day, and it's untraceable. So there were no serial numbers, and that some of the things that she was saying, and some of the things that she shared. I mean, sometimes I can't believe that she said as much as she did and got away with it, but that proved very faithful for her.
That's amazing, Todd. I want to go to the callers here. If we have Rich on the line in New Jersey, you've been very patient. Your comments, questions are appreciated. Good morning if you're with us. How you doing?
Hi guys. A preface to what I'm going to say. There's a movie called Hombre with Paul Newman. There's a fight at the stagecoach, and you can see that the blood is painted on the film. I'm looking at a book right now by David Mamet, The Disenlightenment, okay, the Kennedys. I don't know if you allow me to read it, but he says...
well, if you'd be brief, I mean, we don't want to have the whole thing, Rich.
Talk
Go ahead.
about what's wrong with the film. Several frames are missing. No one has ever suggested a logical reason for their exorcism or suppressive red. The blood-spattered explosion on the president's head is clearly painted on. It exists only for one frame, 0.4 seconds. The frame 112 is absent. In the following frame, it's there. And the next frame is gone. It goes on and on. The film is fake, says. Why? I don't know.
So is that the Zapruder film that you're referring to, Rich? I mean,
yes,
I guess
yes.
that's the one.
I'm looking at the book right now. He talks about JFK involved with the girlfriend of Sam Giancana, Jack Ruby, Oswald's mother, all that stuff he goes on to say about.
Well, go ahead, Todd. Respond, because this is fascinating stuff here. I mean, who knows? CIA Special Operations, something to change the video or whatever we've got. The mystery gets deeper. Please continue, Todd.
Yeah. Well, we certainly know it wasn't the mafia that could have done anything like that back in the day. So this is high-level intelligence. A lot of people even believe the Life magazine with Oswald on the cover holding the newspaper is a fake, is a forgery, that the shadows don't match, they don't line up. And they did that back in the day, but it was not low-level mafia guys who could paint blood on a frame. And yeah, the problem with Zapruder was himself interviewed by the FBI. The FBI had agents that were not listed out in the crowd that day, but they were taking people's cameras away from them. They were taking film, and people were told they would get this film back. A lot of them never did. Zapruder himself eventually sold that to, I want to say, Time Life magazine.
You're right. I read that. He sold it for a price. He wasn't going to give it up. Yeah. You bet. Right.
Mm-hmm. So they had it for years before it was ever shown to the public. Geraldo Rivera, to his credit, first showed that Zapruder film to the American public on his talk show in the 70s. And that was when the House Assassination Committee was opening all these cases, and a lot of people started ending up with, self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the back of the head. And so is it possible that the CIA could have helped with that cover-up? They definitely chopped up the film. And there's other mysteries too, like the Babushka lady. She's caught on the film, but no one ever identified her, and never found any trace of who that woman was. But yeah, I mean that is plausible. I mean, for back then, I think that's something intelligence community people could have done back in the day.
Rich, that's amazing that you brought it to us. You got a closing comment if you're still with us, because we must move on. Go ahead, sir, if you're with us.
Well, I just remember as a kid in 4th grade in the Catholic school, they sent us home. I saw my mother crying in the apartment And I'm a kid. I never knew anybody who got killed or died before. And I went back in my room. I started bawling my head out to some. I mean, I never forgot that.
Yeah, me
First
too.
person I ever knew that I knew died. Oh, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's tragic and traumatic for the whole nation. Rich in New Jersey. Thank you. You and your family. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving week.
You too, guys.
You know, this is amazing here. Let's go to clip number 2 as we go back in our time machine to the sounds of NBC News as it reported this particular tragic day.
As we said before, the sniper's nest has been found, and police have recovered a British .303 rifle with a telescopic sight. This is Tom Whalen reporting from Texas for NBC from WBAP-TV.
Things can move this fast when you are dealing with a story of this magnitude, even while we were getting reports from Fort Worth, Dallas, on finding the sniper's nest and details of what was going on in that building from which the bullets were fired. We were handed another story here from Dallas, and Frank has that.
Well, it's to the effect that a Secret Service agent and a Dallas policeman have been shot and killed some distance away from the area where President Kennedy was assassinated. And
you don't want to end up with Alzheimer's and...
Fascinating information here, ladies and gentlemen, from going back in the time machine. But this is interesting, too. Let's move on to the timeline. And Todd, you can comment, of course, as our special guest here. All this activity is happening in breakneck speed, light speed, as we would say here. So at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, the Washington, D.C. phone system breaks down. Now, that's incredibly why, because of all the people trying to call, all the people trying to get information in and out of Washington. 2:03 p.m. on that date, Lee Harvey Oswald leaves the boarding house with a pistol. Now, that's a separate story. At 2:15 p.m., Lee Harvey Oswald murders Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit. Now get a load of this. 2:40 p.m., Lee Harvey Oswald runs into the Texas Theater, where he's later arrested with a fist fight. He gets up, they find him, they corner him, he tried to reach for his pistol. I think he punched one of the officers in the face, and thus they arrested him. And then finally, 3 p.m., Rena Oswald, get a load of this, finds Lee Harvey Oswald's wedding ring at home on the top of a dresser. Wow, Todd, the story just gets more amazing, more crazy, more unbelievable. Right. So how the heck did Lee Harvey Oswald get all over the city to go back to the rooming house unless these places are only 25 feet away from where the alleged shooting took place? It's amazing.
Yeah, and another amazing thing is Dallas police officers walked right by him. He was on, I want to say, the 3rd floor in the break room at the school book depository waiting by a payphone. Perhaps he was waiting to hear from his handlers or his operators at the time, but he walked past the entire police department and the security. He walked out of the school book depository. And it's weird that the cops showed up in force, about 20, 30 cops, Dallas PD. One of the higher-ups was there and there's a photograph of him putting Oswald in the car. And basically, all these cops were responding to a man who walked into a movie theater without paying a ticket. That seems a bit overkill. Yeah. And again, they found him in record time that would baffle even modern law enforcement. But Oswald, the interesting thing about the phone lines, too, in Washington, D.C., they all went down, and there's, while Oswald is in jail, it's amazing if you go back and look at every interview that he gave. I'm surprised they let him speak so much to the press and to the cameras like they did, but they did. And he also made a phone call while he was in jail, and they traced that phone call back to Virginia. And what's in Virginia? Langley, Virginia. Wow. And that is the CIA. They think that he was calling his handler. They noted that. They traced the number back. And then the curious thing is, and this is all into the mythology of why Oswald did it, because he wanted notoriety, he wanted to be famous. I just don't buy that, because he had an opportunity. As the eyes of the news world were upon him, here's a camera in his face with a microphone. They asked him, did you shoot the president? And he said, no, I didn't shoot anybody. He said, what are you being charged with? He said, I don't know. They just told me that this policeman got shot. And then Oswald famously, if he was a rabid communist, and if he had just slain the leader of the free world as a communist, he would have claimed that. He would have owned up to that, but he didn't. He said, I'm just a patsy. And those words right there, and those words, It
Those are
implies
infamous words. Right,
Yeah.
infamous. And what's even more interesting, what could be more interesting than what you just said, but this is also credible. Give us your take on how this individual, Lee Harvey Oswald, alleged Marine sharpshooter, now has the ability to defect to Russia. And it all seems also well orchestrated that during that time, as we continue the deep part of the Cold War, I think we'll agree, right, ladies and gentlemen?
Right.
How does this guy simply slip through the cracks? He winds up, denouncing his American citizenship, if I'm correct. Many people have heard that a million times. And now he marries a young lady over there. That's his right. He brings her back with little or no difficulty. I'm sure the immigration process then was very much a very slow process, especially from the then Soviet Union. How does all this take place? That's amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't. And in 1960, it would have never happened. No way in the world would Oswald would have been allowed to defect and then come back with a Russian bride. But as soon as he did, and Oswald is in Russia, a strange thing happens. The U-2 spy plane flown by Gary Powers is shot down after Oswald gets to Russia. Oswald worked with radar. He knew what to look for. And then he's permitted to come back to the country. His name definitely went on a list. And I think that back then they were already kind of setting him up to be the fall guy, the patsy, as he said in his own words. And then there's this other myth that he was a sharpshooter. And so I want to say about 2 months before Kennedy was assassinated, there was a General Edwin Walker in Dallas who was very right-wing, militant, very conservative, and Oswald they blamed an assassination attempt of that general on Oswald, but this was a man who was sitting in his chair in his living room, and the shot missed. So so you can't shoot a guy sitting down in his living room, but you can shoot a moving target.
So much for a sharpshooter, right, Todd? Well, let's do this. Going back in the time machine, talking about Lee Harvey Oswald, another clip that I'd like the audience to hear if they have never heard this, especially younger listeners who weren't even around. They were just a gleam and a thought in many people's parents' eyes, or whatever. Clip number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
In the wake of the Kennedy assassination, the Dallas police, on the one hand, they were committing all of the resources to trying to solve the crime. On the other hand, they were ill-equipped to handle this tsunami of reporters.
Well, I was questioned by a judge. However, I protested at that time that I was not allowed
In bringing Oswald out, they were, of course, doing something that you would never see happen today. But they were trying to cooperate with the press with the understanding that there would not be questions shouted at him. Did you kill the president?
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I heard about was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
You have been.
Nobody said what? Sir?
You have been.
Nobody said what? Okay, man. Okay.
What are you doing right now?
That's amazing. Going through our timeline, we find out 2:30 a.m., November the 23rd, Lee Harvey Oswald is charged with the murder of President John F. Kennedy in Texas. That's an amazing story unto itself. And then, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to move through the story, which is totally amazing, Todd, you bring up so many points here. It makes it even more confusing, but not to the listeners, right? Your information is just, this is so good. But we have a few minutes before the bottom of the hour. So tell me, in your opinion, who do you think Rose Cheramy was with? And describe these people that were described by her. Give us some information of who these people she traveled with were like.
She claimed that the men that she was traveling with were from Miami, and they were going to Dallas. She described them as Italian-looking. She was shown some mugshots and things like that of people. The state trooper that picked her up initially became a part of Jim Garrison's investigative team. I thought kind of interesting, but one of the mugshots that was going around at the time was a man who would later be involved in the Watergate scandal. And a lot of people think that Rose Cheramy was some sort of agent. I uncovered and as did Jim Garrison. She was an FBI informant, and she, after the assassination, she was quoted as saying, I don't even want to be a part of this mess anymore. She did not want to talk to the FBI, probably because she already did.
Well, yeah, and it's just like a story that I actually had in my life when President Nixon was running for, I believe, his second term. We were in New Jersey, going to high school at the time, and actually sitting in the Republican headquarters. I'm identifying what party I was obviously with and still with. But the interesting thing is, Richard Nixon's brother was there, and then also sitting next to him was a woman with the last name Hunt. And I said to her, "Oh, nice to meet you." She goes, "Well, my father was E. Howard Hunt." And for people who don't know who he was, here's what I'm building up to real quick before the bottom of the hour, is that she was saying to me that there have been rumors, which she didn't believe. You know, she said, "I wanted to spell it if you've heard it," that my father was one of the so-called alleged hobos walking behind the train tracks, an area by the grassy knoll, with get a load of who else? Frank Sturgis and Eugenio Martinez. And who are those people? The Watergate burglars, right? That's amazing.
Yes. Sturgis was the one they tried to link to these Italian-looking men from Miami with Rose Cheramy. Also, fun fact, Woody Harrelson's dad was thought to be one of the hobos, and he was later arrested for assassinating a judge in Houston. He was a sort of a high-level operative. But yeah, and a lot of people think that the Bay of Pigs sealed the fate of JFK. Like when he did not provide air cover for the Cuban invasion, a lot of people, I think he signed his own death warrant at that point.
Interesting. So, Todd, do you think we're going to get a better answer as to the truth and facts of the UFO thing? Or are we ever going to hear the one about the Kennedy assassination? And maybe that's an unfair question because, what? What's your response? That's crazy stuff.
I don't think the waters are so muddied now. I don't think we'll ever get the truth. Someone has probably already come forth and told us the truth about the Kennedy assassination. It's just that there's so much, and there's more now. That it's all distraction. Some of it is disinformation put out there. I don't think we're ever going to have a smoking gun, but we've come pretty close. I think we'll find out more about UFOs before we know the truth of the JFK.
Well, you've answered us, and that's what we love, a man who gives us a straight-up answer. And, folks, if you're still looking to give us a call here, we encourage it. There's plenty of time, 1-800-848-9222. And if John is in Reno from there and still there up in the beautiful Silver State in the high desert, we'll get you on, and everybody else as we can, ladies and gentlemen, talking with our very special guest, Todd C. Elliott. Tell us, Todd, quickly, how do we get the book for people who want to dig deeper into this?
I would visit Trine, Trine, TrineDay.com, and you can order it from there. It's also available on Amazon.
Well, thank you very much. More on the Dr. Sky with you as we move deeper into your weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Wishing each and every one of you the best, a happy and healthy Thanksgiving week. We'll be right back.
It's going to be cold outside. Here's John McConville with how to fill up your tank.
I'm John McConville, president of United Metro Energy. You can rely on United Metro Energy to be your trusted provider, supplying the New York metro area and Long Island, supplying single-family homes, large apartment, commercial buildings, and the wholesale class of customers. Keep you and your family warm this winter by calling 888-246-4328 or visiting UnitedMetroEnergy.com. We look forward to speaking with you.
You want justice? Think Jenna D'Agostino. Think D'Agostino and Associates. Justice isn't just a word. For us, it's a way of life. It's having compassion for your struggle and getting you paid for your pain. Now that's justice. D'Agostino and Associates means being there for the injured.
I'm John D'Agostino. Seriously injured? Call my team first at 1-800-FIGHT-BACK. That's 1-800-248-3222. D'Agostino and Associates has offices throughout New York and New Jersey. D'Agostino, law, fight back.
Listen to this podcast now on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Cop Talk with Captain Ed Mametz and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Today's guest is retired NYPD Sergeant Jack Cucci.
I grew up in Brooklyn in Canarsie, went to South Shore High School, went to LIU for college, worked on Wall Street, My neighbor one time I was outside had mentioned, like, why don't you just become a cop, a fireman, something like that. I followed his advice, took the test, and it all began.
So when'd you come on the job?
Came on in 92, got promoted, became a sergeant. Then when I became the crime sergeant, when you're really looking for the guns and weapons.
What particular section did you work?
I went in as an FIO, field intelligence officer, still connected to the 70 precinct. Soon enough, 9/11 hit, and then I went into a unit called the TIU, it was a terrorist interdiction unit, and we dealt with putting informants into active cells in and around the city.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hello, America! Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the incomparable Dr. Sky program, one of my idols. He is a man of science.
Saturday, November the 23rd, 1963, 8:15 a.m. Lee Harvey Oswald is now back in his cell after being questioned for only 3 hours. At 12:21 p.m. Central Standard Time, Jack Ruby shoots Lee Harvey Oswald in the basement of the Dallas police station. And then at 2:07 p.m., Lee Harvey Oswald dies at the same location and hospital that President John F. Kennedy died at Parkland Hospital. The beat goes on, the strangeness continues, and the mystery is out there 32 minutes after the hour. Now, Todd, this is an amazing thing. It's like I'm more confused, but I hope I'm not confusing the audience. It's not your fault or mine. It's just we don't know. It's like a gigantic puzzle that continues to expand, and it's amazing. But let's do this. People who've been patient, they want to hear from you, too, and their opinions are expressed. Let's say good morning to John in the Silver State and the beautiful city of Reno, Nevada. Good morning, John. Thanks for waiting.
Good morning, Dr. Sky. It's good to talk to you. Frank Morano turned me on to your show a couple of years ago.
Oh, thanks.
And I've enjoyed you ever since.
Well, thank you, sir. How's Reno this morning? Nice and cold, right?
It's nice. It's getting chilly. It's that time of year. It's starting to get chilly up here.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite places when they used to run the Reno air races. It's Stead Field, right at the airport there. You know that one, I'm sure. There you go.
Yep, I'm the Stead.
That's right.
Oh, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Last year, I was in a big parking lot, a Walmart parking lot, and a huge chunk of ice, maybe half the size of a refrigerator, fell out of the sky, and it disintegrated on the pavement.
Well, we appreciate it. Like I said, we try to ask everybody to stay on that.
Okay.
That's an interesting one. You know what we're going to do here, Todd? We're going to say respectfully to our caller from Reno that has to be for another show, and it's another one of the great mysteries yet, the piece of ice that came out of the sky, just like the UFO. Yeah. Let's continue with Tony in Clifton. Good morning, Tony. How are you today and this morning?
Good morning. You know, I was going to just listen when I heard Todd talking about James Garrison. He's like my favorite district attorney. Once I saw the movie JFK, I really sort of took into everything that was happening. And Garrison is the only person who took anything related to the death of our dear President Kennedy to trial. And it's amazing to me how quickly that was like a very politicized judge who quickly turned, the whole trial off. The gentleman who they were investigating was Clay somebody. And in a minute, that whole thing just disintegrated. It was just amazing to me. And Jim Garrison was my hero. I look at him as the only person.
I agree. And Jim Garrison, I worked in New Orleans for years. I always thought they should have had a statue to that man, but he wasn't very popular in New Orleans because he went against people like Clay Shaw, who Tommy Lee Jones played. And that was the only man ever brought that they brought to court for the murder of the president. And Clay Shaw, it's crazy. They still have placards up to Clay Shaw, though, in the French Quarter. And he was definitely proven later to be a CIA operative.
Interesting.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Tony, let's ask you a direct question. Of all the research and all the things you've heard over the years, who do you think really, or what group is responsible for the assassination of President Kennedy? I want to hear your opinion.
Well, I've watched so many documentaries, read books, saw the Roger Stone movie, and I think the CIA was heavily involved. I was watching and also Jim Garrison's papers are part of the National Archives. I just wanted to say that, which is amazing. They're part of our National Archives. So that's amazing that everything's there. I think it was the CIA. And I'm a security buff, so it seemed very strange to me that in Dallas, it was so open for President Kennedy to be shot. The way the announcement was made, I think ahead of time of where it would be. And then there was the FBI office in Dallas, and there was, movies made and stories about how they were investigating someone. They were investigating Lee Harvey Oswald, and he, was going to the FBI in Dallas on several times, and they never did anything with it. And then after it all came out, that was a big piece of it. So I think it was, as a kid, I always thought it was LBJ had something to do with it.
Yes, we